the power of trying to get done by 3:30 so that we don't hit the 4 o'clock, and although sometimes it doesn't really matter, does it? Go at 2 in the afternoon and all of a sudden it's backed up. We've got, pay no attention behind the screen here. We're still trying to get our tech together, and certainly I think in the post-COVID, we're finally meeting again world, we're still trying to get our sea legs about us when it comes to getting all the items put together. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started this morning as folks are filtering in. This is I'm like the warm-up crew for the show. So the comedy stylings. My name is Michael Preston. I'm the executive director of the Florida Consortium of Metropolitan Research Universities. I've been working in this position since 2015. We've had a lot of great opportunities to work together between our 3 member institutions, Florida International University, the University of Central Florida, and University of South Florida, where we're transforming learning into talent for our state. And so if I get, is there a clicker or something that I can?
I'm gonna get the clicker right now, but I'm gonna move 3 seconds.
Okay, there we go. Just to give you a little idea of who the Florida Consortium is, if you're unfamiliar with our work, we like to say we leverage the unique assets of Miami, Orlando, and Tampa Bay to develop talent which enhances community well-being. And what we really mean by that, and the work that we try to do in the Florida Consortium, is come together and think about the best practices that our 3 universities embark on, and then even expand that further to the best practices that we also share with our state and community colleges here within the state and beyond. And we believe that when we work together, we can reduce time from idea to actual implementation. We can adopt best practices that are working on each one of our campuses, and we can actually save money by kind of capitalizing on that previously held knowledge. And that ultimately, hopefully, will strengthen Florida's talent pipeline through sharing of ideas with scalable solutions, which accelerate that student learning and then ultimately into their career. So, next slide there. So wow, did a little transition. That was fun. Some of our early accomplishments, just raised over 600 million. That would be awesome. Braulio, we don't need, that'd be great. $6.5 million in program grants that have helped us really accelerate everywhere from faculty development to what you're at right now, transfer success, career and workforce development, and a number of other projects that we've coordinated over the past 6 years. We founded the National Student Success Conference. We co-founded the Sunshine Teaching and Learning Conference, and then this Transfer Success Network, which is bringing you this accelerated transfer meeting today, is certainly another thing that is one of our real accomplishments that we're excited about. We were really excited that at the beginning of the pandemic, whenever things were really not going well in the state, we partnered with Helios Education Foundation. Braulio Colon is here, and we'll be talking to you a little later, to secure summer completion grants for students, where we had a 91% completion rate after those grants were secured. So those went to students in the summer who otherwise would have had to drop out, and then ultimately over 600 students received completion grants who did not qualify under the CARES Act for additional supports. And to date, we've got over 91% of those students who have either graduated or stayed on track to graduation as a result. And so we're really excited about the work that we're doing. And that's because we believe that there's no longer this one university, one destination approach to higher education. This is what I got on this track back in the day. You know, my parents dropped me off at orientation, and then they came and picked me up 4 years later, and I was all degreed up and ready to go, right? Well, our students don't do that. They typically have a education plan that looks like this. More like this is the Washington, D.C. subway map. This is what I could find. Most of you know what this is, so I'll just go ahead and say it. But it really is. It's on-ramps and off-ramps. They take different stations. They're going to take different routes. The average college student now attends 2.5 colleges. I don't know, 0.5 maybe is like what they got from credits in high school. But ultimately, they're probably going to make their way through one of our state colleges and onto one of our university campuses. Not necessarily necessarily starting straight at the university. And we have to be prepared for the work that we need to do in order to make sure that those are seamless, that the trains run on time, and that they pick the students up exactly when they need to be picked up and deliver them exactly when they need to be delivered at their final destination. And that's because ultimately great cities need great universities and colleges. Miami, Orlando, and Tampa Bay would not be the same without FIU, UCF, and USF. Period, the end. We know this. And they would not be the same without Miami-Dade College, without Valencia, without Seminole State, without Hillsborough, Broward, all of you that are assembled here. Tens and hundreds of thousands of students have been educated and are contributing to our state's economy because of the work that we do, and we do it better than most. Some of our advantages that we have are our cities need our graduates, and our graduates need our cities. I'm going to show you a stat here in just a minute that proves that out. Our universities reflect the diversity of our cities. This is what I love about coming to FIU, because it's like coming home a little bit, but also it's like you look around, FIU is Miami. And Miami is FIU. The students that are here come from these neighborhoods, and they ultimately go and work in these neighborhoods. And we're integrated as part of our city cultures and identities. So some of our workforce needs, I don't want to jump ahead too far, but we're going to need nearly 2 million more jobs by 2030 at the current rate of economic growth in order to keep up the economy here in Florida. We need to work on that, and 65% of those jobs are going to require a baccalaureate degree or some sort of post-secondary certificate. We're excited about this number right here. 3 out of every 4 students who graduates from one of our 3 universities stays and works in the state of Florida. So they're buying houses, they're raising families. They want to stay here and work in Florida because they love being in Florida. I mean, what's not to love, except for hurricanes? And so some of our impact, and then I'm going to get out of the way. It looks like we got everybody in here. See, I did my job. I got everybody kind of sit down and settle in. Our Florida Consortium, we have 49% of the total SUS enrollment attends one of our 3 institutions. 64% of our state college transfer, those are AA transfers, attend one of our 3 institutions. Over half of Pell eligible students in the state. And then once again, this stay and work in Florida, this keeps going up. And that's because our average starting salary has gone up about 20% since we started working together. And we think that comes from better agreements and work together to help students find better jobs. And then some of our transfer student impact, you can kind of see some of these here. Our transfer students help fuel the diversity at our institutions. It's clear. About 30% of our transfer students are adult students that are over the age of 26. 1% of our FTICs are. Our students are twice as likely to be from our communities of color, and ultimately are more likely to be on either low income or Pell eligible. And ultimately that helps our diversity, but it also helps our social mobility of all of our 3 institutions. And the students that attend our institutions, we are all in the top 75 in terms of social mobility for our graduates. So you come here, you can actually change the trajectory of your family. I didn't attend one of these 3 institutions, but I'm a living example of that. Both of my parents got a GED, or as my dad called it, a good enough degree. And then I was the first in my family to go to college, and now I'm like standing up here in front of y'all, and he'd be very proud. He's like, you know, my son says smart stuff. And so that's ultimately what we're all about. So we're glad that you're here. We're very happy that you are here today. We've got an exciting day planned with a cavalcade of stars in the morning, and it's been punctuated by some great ed sessions throughout the day. Please make sure that you get a chance to know your neighbors and network while we're here, and ultimately learn a lot and then take a lot back home so that you can start to apply that to the work that you do every single day. And so I do want to give a quick thank you to Helios Education Foundation. They are one of the major contributors to the work that we do and actually help really fund this so that this is free for all of you to attend today. So thank you very much. It's because they believe in these great partnerships here in the state of Florida, and so it's always great to have great friends. So with the official welcome, Dr. Janie Valdez, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Is this working? Is it? Okay. I usually feel like I'm a little louder than this. I have some prepared remarks and a couple of PowerPoint slides, but I wanted to welcome you this morning specifically to FIU. It is amazing, as the proverbial extrovert that I am, to get this energy and be back in person. This is our 5th annual summit, and the first couple of years was hosted so brilliantly at UCF, and then we went 2 years remote, so it's great to be here. I encourage you to walk around Panther Nation, as we call it. We're at 305. You can walk into just about any office and smell that cafecito cubano to lift your spirits in the last couple of hours of the day. And also where the odds are ever in your favor, if you strike a conversation with a student, that student's going to be a transfer student. So welcome, all welcome. I see folks from our largest sending partner, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, just friends from the transfer world, which is always really, really exciting. I am Janie Valdez. I have the privilege to be and serve FIU for nearly 20 years, Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management and Services. Most of my portfolio is around transfer student success. And I am a transfer student. I grew up in near Little Havana, the daughter of Cuban exiles, and started my educational experience in Miami-Dade College. We didn't have the means to get me a car, so it was a geographical decision to hop on the bus a block away and land in the gates of Miami-Dade College, ready to give me lots of opportunities. So in many ways, I am the student that we continue to serve. I also would be remiss if I didn't offer a sincere welcome from our interim president, Ken Jessel, and interim provost Elizabeth Behar, who could not be here today, but who are incredible transfer champions in their own right and have been for many years. I also I want to give a special shout out to our folks from Florida Gulf Coast, Ashley Crilly and Jessica Mesa, who are here. If you can wave, let's give them a round of applause. They've been through quite a bit, and we're so happy that you were able to be here, and we're so thrilled that obviously the work you're doing to support your students. Also happy that this coincides with National Transfer Student Week. How awesome is that, right? And so we have a whole week of celebratory activities and really thanking our students for enriching our institutions so fully during this time. I'm also going to go off script for a minute, because usually 99% of the time in the conferences that I attend, the folks who put this together are thanked last. And I want to thank them first, because there were folks here this weekend, folks here at 6:30 in the morning, so can we please give a shout out to everyone who's trying to make this summit a success. So thank you, thank you. Lots of great people working on that, and led by Jennifer Bravo here at FIU. This year, FIU is celebrating the 50th anniversary of our opening day in 1972. I sometimes think about what that must have been like for our core founders to arrive at an abandoned airport in the late 1960s and vision and then realize a university that made an outstanding education within reach for thousands of students. By the time opening day arrived, FIU opened its doors to a record 5,667 students. Students who were place-bound, some with partially completed degrees from their home countries as immigrants and exiles. Most were adult learners with AA degrees, and all with one thing in common. All were waiting for their public university. You see, when FIU opened its doors, it did so to only transfer students. Transfer students are part of our DNA. Today, FIU serves the second largest transfer enrollment in the nation, welcoming nearly 10,000 new students annually. Our enduring identity of faithfully serving the unduly underserved is due in large measure to the thousands who begin their post-secondary education at our state college partners. Through balanced and trusting relationships externally with our largest sending partners, Miami-Dade College, Broward College, and Palm Beach State College, our grantors, and organizations like Helios, Aspen, and many others, and and those relationships internally with our faculty and academic advisors who work diligently, intentionally, and passionately to design evidence-based transfer-affirming and receptive practices for all our transfers. So I wanted to share, I wish I had more time to share all of these practices, but I wanted to share more than anything a few practices and outcomes, because there's a lot of exciting work happening at FIU. We're really, I think, lucky to live in a state with a long-standing and comprehensive articulation framework. And while that framework supports credit and student mobility, it still falls short in making students what we call transfer ready, what some of you call major ready. It also tells us little about the actual experiences that students have on the pathway. And it also doesn't mean that articulation and transfer practices are just and fair. So our role in transfer affirming practices comes primarily through our Connect for Success pathway, where we build upon that articulation and add incentives, FIU Bridge advisors to work in tandem with our college advisors to help more students be transfer ready, and that means securing a major early, completing prerequisites on time, and of course the engagement component and affinity building with FIU prior to transfer, which our students have told us year upon year that tends to decrease their transfer fears. So there's three particular things that we focus on. Number one, and that we signal to students, transfer is expected, transfer is attainable, and three, probably the most important part for us, is that it is our job to help them in the process, to empower them throughout the journey. We use an asset-based and strengths-based approach in advising and coaching, always aimed at maintaining students' four-year identity. This is because, in large measure, community colleges are still viewed, and sadly, by some, as having a second-rate status. This trickles down to students and can shape their perceptions of their own self-worth. This deficit-mindedness is old, tiring, and a waste of human capital. So, I wanted to show you in the next slide some of the work that's been happening nationally around what we call the transfer funnel. And that funnel has received a lot of national attention in the last few years for its inefficiencies. Great folks like the folks at Aspen and others are working to improve that funnel nationwide. So what the funnel says is that when you speak with community college students, 80% of them will tell you that they have an intention to transfer to the four-year institution. About 31% do so within 6 years, and 14% will actually earn their baccalaureate degree within 6 years of their start date. Connect for Success is showing a more promising pathway. These cohorts are anywhere between 800 and 1,200 students. We have the same start. 80% are telling us and showing us with their enrollment that they intend to continue their education at FIU. About 42% are transitioning within 4 years, not 6. The last 2018 cohort actually showed us for the first time that within 3 years they were graduating, that within 3 years that 42% was hit instead of 4 years. And at the point of transition, we've got 80% graduating in 3 years post-transition or still enrolled. So this more promising pathway is what we're trying to improve, to scale, and to find gaps that still exist on the pathway, including fractured STEM pathways, which is a nationwide challenge. This work takes time, it takes resources, creativity, care, and a willingness to know that the work will always evolve, that we're never going to get everything right, but that we're going to work to get darn close. In this way, our institutions become the unit of analysis and our transfer students the value proposition and not the other way around. Our transfer receptive practices are rooted in a lot of automation by this nice guy to my left and your right. We tell him what we want to see, our students tell him what we want to see, and he makes it happen. But our transfer receptive practices are rooted themselves in, number one, transparency and timeliness around credit transfer and our equivalency process. To support that transparency and advanced planning for students, we created our public-facing transfer equivalency database that now includes 90,000 articulated rules. This helps students avoid credit loss and maximize the applicability of credit, which has been shown nationally to be a challenge. Our goal is to have all credits posted and articulated in the degree audit prior to the student's arrival on our campus, and we work really hard to do that. We, an amazing team, let me say that, we as an amazing team work hard to do that. Transfer students are also part of a financial aid leveraging model, which is not typical in four-year institutions. We've learned through trend analysis that transfers need roughly an additional $1,000 additional dollars in transportation cost to be successful and be retained. Our model goes through a student's entire experience as a retention strategy. And we also offer transfer-specific scholarships, including as part of our Helios-supported Consortium Transfer Success Grant. Now, when a student has this information, what credits transferred, what credits do I need to graduate, and how am I going to pay for this? Only when these are actually addressed and in a timely way are they going to get engaged at FIU. They want to be engaged. They are looking for the mentorships. They are looking, if they're interested in undergraduate research, how do I jump on that research immediately? How do I get prepared, more prepared, to get those 21st century competencies so that I can join the workforce? So what I have for you, again, looking from an outcomes perspective, is just take a look at what we've been able to do with AA full-time students. Almost 30% difference in the last few years in graduation rates in 2 years. We add an extra year to that, again, full-time students, and that goes to 81%. Now that's wonderful, and it's actually, we're second in the nation. We're second in the Board of Governors metrics around transfer success. But you can't help but think about, you're full-time, why are you not graduating in 2 years? Right? Let's think about what that looks like. What do those pathways look like? How can we improve those to move more of these students to the 2-year mark? And of course, we've got the 40% there as well. So it's always thinking about, as we have successes, is where do we continue to have gaps? If we actually look at our Black and African American students, these differences here are not as prominent as they are for our first time in college students. So we're seeing successes. What's the challenge, folks? Look at the cohort differences. We need to represent more of our students in our community. Lastly, COVID. This is the kind of stuff that keeps us up at night. Nearly 300,000 students, transfer students, missing since COVID. Year 1 and year 2. We saw year 1 had the deepest decline, and year 2 saw some improvement, but nonetheless, losses in both years. Transfer to 2 years saw 113,000 fewer students, and for 4 years, 86,000, plus an additional 30,000, whether it's upward transfers or your typical, let's say typical in quotes, 2 plus 2, and lateral transfers going from, my friends, from UCF to FIU. I'm just saying. It's a joke, because I can joke with my family, all right? So lateral transfers were also challenging, and disproportionate steeps for our Latinx, Hispanic, Black, and low-income students, upward transfers. This is great data is available to you in this report from the National Student Clearinghouse. There's a lot more information. Hispanic serving institutions also experienced disproportionate declines compared to peers. So this is stuff that we have to think about and that we have to worry about. As advocates, connectors, translators, mythbusters, and motivators, role models and change agents, and longtime disruptors. There are lots of disruptors in this room that I recognize, and you're disruptors before it became cool to be a disruptor. It's our job to amplify the incredible assets that our transfer students bring to our campuses and in the transfer pathway as our most viable equity driver. So I thank you, and I wish you a wonderful summit. Like Michael, I'll say, look at all these amazing presentations. I welcome students. Do we have students in the room yet? Because I know that we've got some students from Broward. We had some students outside. Well, there's some students here, so please don't miss that great panel at lunch. And Broward College also has a set of students. The student voice is critical. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the podium our summit partner, sponsor, and friend, Braulio Colon, Vice President of Florida Student Success Initiatives at the Helios Education Foundation, where he serves as strategic lead in the foundation's community investment and engagement activities designed to increase student success in Florida. I invite you to read his biography online, including his civic leadership in Tampa and commitment to his alma mater, USF, and his longtime commitment to access and success for underrepresented students. Suffice it to say that we've made him an honorary transfer champion. Braulio listens more attentively than most. He asks tough questions and different questions. There's always a curveball question. But he also frames challenges as opportunities 99.9% of the time. And we appreciate him for that. We're so fortunate to have him in our corner, and our students are fortunate to have him in theirs. Welcome.
Thank you, Janie. I'll be brief. I have the privilege of introducing our keynote this morning. But before I do that, I just want to speak about Helios and our commitment to this work. Helios is obviously proud to sponsor this event and proud to support the Transfer Network and also the Florida Consortium. But one of the things that is really important to understand about the Florida Consortium and how it connects to our Helios work is Helios was established as a community impact public charity organization that's engaged in the community, who views itself beyond the checkbook, whose board and senior leadership is committed to creating partnerships that align to our mission of creating opportunities for individuals to be successful in college. And we partner with organizations across the education continuum with the recognition that preparing students at the earliest age possible is going to position them to accelerate and up the pipeline and to be successful. Several years ago, I don't know how many years ago it was, Michael, but the exact number of years ago, but the three presidents of our large urban public universities came together and recognized in the data that between the three universities serve the majority of first-generation low-income and minority students, and that if the three universities can figure out a way to collaborate, figure out a way to share best practices, and bring the right people from each institution together, we can accelerate the rate at which we identify gaps, and we can accelerate how the adoption of best practices and policies to actually improve student outcomes. So when they came to us and said, hey, we're looking at the numbers, we see this opportunity, will you support? We were excited because as a foundation, we were still trying to get our arms around Florida, and it actually helped to shape our urban-based regional strategy approach. So I'm really thankful for the consortium and the vision of the presidents, and Michael, they could not have tapped a better leader. Your energy and enthusiasm and your ability to communicate so effectively is making this effort successful. So thank you, Michael, for your leadership and what you do. Let's give Michael a round of applause. With that said, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Adams, and Heather Adams is a senior program manager at the College Excellence Program, and she's leading the development of transfer initiatives. And she, prior to her work at the College Excellence Program, she served as the director of the UCLA Transfer Student Center and the director of UCLA's College Learning Communities. Dr. Adams, you and I share this experience of being a transfer student. I love it. All right. So I started at Valencia College and transferred over to USF. And Michael, my mother would be asking the question, "What is he doing up there?" You know. But she is also she's also very proud, obviously. Heather earned her associate's in psychology from Santa Monica College and transferred to UCLA, where she obtained her BA in psychology and doctorate in educational leadership. So, Dr. Adams, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I so appreciate it. Oh, how many transfers do we have in the room, actually? All right, I love that. Woo! Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Hold on one second. Too many things. Too many things. This. Thank you so much for getting my computer. So I was the one that was taking so long because I like to use my computer. You know how it goes. So thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here. As you were told, I am a proud transfer student, and to your point in the beginning, I feel it's really important to talk about your transfer identity and the pathway of success that transfer is, because you're right, our students don't have the privilege of the success that we have or the jobs that we have, but we can put it on a resume. We can talk about it. We can be proud of our college experiences. So I really feel that community college transfer for me is an identity, and it really goes beyond that transfer of credit and that, the handoff that people talk about, and it's really about claiming your college experience regardless of the journey. We also had that this morning. There were a lot of things. I'm going to skip along to the conversation part because there were a lot of really important principles that were talked about this morning. But one of the things that I get to do is I now get to work at the Aspen Institute, where I get to do research and advocacy on transfer, which is a thrill to me because I found my professional purpose in community college, and so now I get to work with other institutions and help them better the transfer student experience, work towards more equitable outcomes. And one of the projects that I oversee right now is the Aspen Askew Transfer Student Success and Equity Intensive. It's just a national movement, just simple. It's a national movement to advance higher education, higher and more equitable outcomes for community college transfers. But what it really is a year-long, monthly sessions with teams of community colleges and four-year institutions, 31 teams, 65 institutions, who commit to working on a strategic transfer excellence plan that they're going to embed into their larger student success strategy, which is where we really see that change happens, right? When transfer's connected to that institutional mission and vision, that's when we really see these transformational changes happen. So we've got 31 teams, 65 institutions across 20 states who are working on this. We call it the STEP. Strategic Transfer Excellence Plan, get it? Yeah, STEP. So ultimately, I think we're going to serve about 10,000 plus transfer students a year if we keep this going. So it's a really fun project. I feel lucky to be part of it. So I figured I would start there. I would start with the kind of national context so that we could see a little bit of what's going on in the country. Some of this data is not going to be a surprise to y'all. So first of all, transfers do excellently. They do really well, particularly at highly selective institutions, but really, frankly, across the board. Look at that. I mean, they do really excellent, and I'll make sure that everybody has access to this data and to this this PowerPoint after. This will be a surprise to no one because you just saw it. The numbers are a little different just because the Clearinghouse just last week updated their latest report. You should definitely check out their transfer and student mobility reports. They're doing like one every 6 months. They're amazing. So 80% want to transfer, 32 community college students do transfer, and then 16 now want to actually graduate with a bachelor's degree within 6 years. And the sad thing is this incredible disparity between aspiration, right, and the reality of outcomes. And so I think we need to reflect on it a minute. That's why I'm standing here. I know we've covered already, but this is drastic. This is sad. And we all know that that transfer could be this mechanism for social change, racial justice, social mobility, but it ain't working right now nationally. And it's been like this for like a decade. It's not moving. It'll move a percentage point or two. And so it's really going to take transformational change. It's going to take practitioners and staff and faculty and leaders who are just ensuring that transfer is always in the focus, always a top priority, always embedded into the larger student success strategy. And that's why you're here today, and that's the teams that are sitting in the seats here. So I want to now then go to the Florida context of like what's going on here. So I did a little analysis of Florida data. Now, first of all, y'all are superstars. You are so amazing. You are at the forefront of the nation. Number 1 in the country for transfer with award rate. Number 1, by the way, where New Jersey is a distant second, like 10 percentage points behind you. Oh yeah, so you're up there. Number 5 in the country for community college cohort bachelor's completion rate, 10 in the country for the transfer out rate. And this isn't even talking about some of those incredible impacts that you've made through this consortium in the state. So I'm not even digging too deep into the data. Now, bear with me. This is older data, right? 2010 to 2016. But honestly, with what we know and the research that we've done, I wouldn't be surprised if there's not any change in this. Y'all are doing the work. You have clearly seen my presentation and read the playbook, and you know what you're doing. And I think, I'll get to more current data in a moment, but the bottom line is that Florida is just killing it. I'm super impressed. We learn from you every single day. I talk about y'all all the time. I do. It's true. When I'm working with institutions, I use you as a model. I love that collaborative. If we work together, we've got more opportunity to tighten that support net. So just know that. I talk about y'all the time. It's super impressive, and I get inspired by you every day. So I then wanted to kind of go into a little bit of the enrollment of today, right? I promised some more recent data. So what is it looking like today? This is data from the State University System of Florida. I feel like I'm stuck behind this thing. Okay, here, this is what I'm doing. All right, so this is what it looks like today. And right now we're looking at the State University System of Florida. These are the declines in transfer enrollment. And I want to bring your attention to the right here. Now, obviously, that's a pandemic, right? That's what's on the top of all of our minds. That's where we're kind of focusing. But I want to bring your attention over here. There's been a decline in transfer pre-pandemic. So that's just something to note, right? Pre-pandemic, from at least fall 2018, there's been a decline in transfer. And so what's that about? We gotta sort of suss that out. We'll see what's going on. So let's check out the completion rates, right? Or I'm sorry, the first time in college student enrollment across the State University system of Florida. So what do you notice? This decline in enrollment is unique to transfers, right? Yeah, because as transfer enrollment has decreased, the first time in college student enrollment across the board has increased in the same 5 years. And this is just one example to me. We'll go back to here with the enrollment. This is just one example to me that any response we have is not a pandemic response. It has to be a systemic response. It has to be disrupted. This is system failure, right? And you still have really high numbers, right? You really have great numbers. It's just that there's room. There's room for improvement. And a little bit more digging, and this you kind of already saw. But I want to kind of get into what the underlying reasons are. And I did a little analysis. I focused on AA because, let's face it, Associates of Arts, they're the transfer degree. It's the promise of transfer and workforce development. Most likely students in that Associate's degree program are probably going to be transfers, so I focused there. So you see the enrollments going down. And this is a little bit more, this is a little newer data. And so there, if you go then and you look at the completion, so look at the degrees awarded in AA and look at the enrollments. What do you see? Anybody, shout it out. No? All right. Well, what I notice when I look at it is that the community college enrollment has declined. It's still hundreds of thousands of students, right? There's still lots of transfers, lots of students in community college. But with the enrollment decline in the AA program, the completion rate has increased. So somehow, even during a pandemic, you've improved student success. This is exciting to me. You should be excited by this. This is good news. It's really good news because you're working your butts off and it's showing. Right? In 5 years during a pandemic, it's showing. So I did a little bit more analysis, and I noticed that there are roughly 23,000 students in the Florida's community college transfer cohort. I say community college a lot. I was in California, so I know it's Florida. State colleges here, forgive me for that faux pas, but I do use the community college a lot. So 23,000 students are in the Florida's community college transfer cohort each year. So that's how many transfer each year from a community college to a four-year. Now what do you notice? This is total. This is all the students that transfer in the state per year, regardless of a degree. So you have 60,000 AA completers, but only 23,000 transfers. That's not even including AS. So this is great. There's so much opportunity. Now, how are we going to get this, 60,000 to transfer? How are we going to get more students to transfer? That's really the question, right? Like, how are we going to maintain this, or not, or maybe even increase those opportunities since we've seen the enrollment go down? Well, I think one strategy has already been talked about. I think a strategy that's really I'm seeing nationally in the field is thinking about equity, transfer as an equity strategy. And this is what we're talking about in the transfer intensive, where folks are embedding transfer into their student success strategies and their equity plan. So, and kind of digging into that a little bit, you know, if transfer is this lever of social mobility, and then this has got to be kind of the next frontier of transfer. But it has to be intentional. So what I'm seeing here in Florida is that first time, you know, you're right here now, we're looking at Florida first time in college students from the Florida college system are more likely to come from Black and Hispanic communities versus the state university system of Florida students, right? So you see this here, like Hispanic students, Black students. Florida state colleges, SUS. Right? So there's great opportunity. This is incredible. This is good news again. You got 60,000 transfers with AAs, many of whom are students of color. Then you go to socioeconomic level, and the differences are even more drastic. So at your Florida college system, you've got 54% Pell eligible students enrolled, versus at the state university system of Florida, 35. This is where your equity initiative is. This is the 60,000 students, and I'm not even, again, I'm only talking about AA, right? I didn't have time to do the AS analysis. So you're ahead of the game. You really are. And your work it's in service of a national imperative. It's important. And I think that, you know, with the work that you've all done and the models that you've set, you are like far ahead of a lot of folks. So again, good news. You get to build on that. This is good for the pipeline. This is good for what you're wanting to do for the student success that we heard about earlier. And you know, how do we do that? What's really interesting is that there's a lot of good news here too, because the research on transfer students outcomes says that, you know, this is from Aspen, this is from the Community College Research Center, this is from all the folks that do the research on community college transfer. It's you that make the difference. All y'all, the faculty, staff, leaders, funders, sponsors, students, it's what you do that makes that difference. That's what the data says. And I'm not going to belabor some of this because I really want to get into conversation, and I'm not sure how much time we have left in terms of where we are in timing. Anybody? Michael? No? Keep going. All right. I want to get to a little conversation because this is the brain trust here, right? This is the transfer brain trust. So, you know, this is what our research says. We synthesized some of the best work in the country. FIU is in the playbook, so you should hopefully recognize that if you're from FIU. A lot of you are, though, right? So I'm working with UCF and Miami-Dade right now in the transfer intensive. I'm learning from them every single day. We had Broward and, oh my gosh, there were so many. Indian River, Tennessee Community College, Tennessee something Community College. What is it? What's the name? Tallahassee, thank you. Tennessee, oh my God. All right, clearly I'm not from the South. I grew up in Maine. Yeah. But anyway, your prize winners, your Aspen prize winners, your transfer intensive members, you're in the playbook, and your American Talent Initiative folks, right? So you're working on it, and you're the experts. And so that's kind of what I want to get to. And I'm not going to go over a lot of these subcategories because I think you're already doing them. So I really want to get into conversation, which is, how do I get out of here? Yeah. And then to the internet. Okay. So, and then you can share, you can do, yeah. Okay, so with your phones, check out this QR code. or go to slido.com and type in 2573387. I'll give you a second to do that. All right, everyone got it? Okay, I'm holding. Okay. Now, I'm going to hopefully open this to the first question. All right, we're going to start with prioritization. And remember, if you remember the slide, prioritization is communicating that transfer is important to the mission. It's data, collecting, sharing, utilizing, measuring, setting partnership goals and metrics. It is funding, resourcing transfer, right? And you can do these from a lot of different areas in your work, right? So think about it from your role. What does your role do in terms of communication, in terms of data, in terms of prioritization of transfer every day? And I'm going to just pose a few questions to you. So this is a scale of kind of where your institution is. So you have not present, you have beginning, emerging, establishing, advanced, or just, don't know. And so read each question and think about where you are. So transfer student success and equity is a major priority in our institution's strategic plan. Like transfers in the strategic plan. Have you ever, searched for the word transfer? This priority filters down through division and departmental level strategic documents and plans. I love that this is so advanced. This is so fun. Emerging. Oh, wow, y'all are, okay, all right. Okay. Woo! We gotta, all right. I want somebody who, it keeps changing. I love it. I want somebody who's emerging to talk about what's going on, and I have stickers. So.
You want another mic for them?
Can I take this one with me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to share about where they are with emerging? Anybody? Oh, come on, y'all. We had 25% of you vote for it. What's going on? Where are you with it? Why aren't you quite at established or advanced? There's a sticker in it for you. It's #transfer_success. It's really cute. You can put it on your laptop. All right, fine. We're going to go to the next question then. All right, next question. Oh, you're already voting. I like it. So data on transfer students is regularly disaggregated by race, ethnicity, income, major, and other characteristics such as age, veteran status, parenting status, first-gen status, commuter status. I could go on and on. Love it. Oh, this is so refreshing to see all the advanced and emerging. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Prospective and current transfer student focus groups and surveys are conducted regularly, I would say at the very least yearly, and used to inform transfer student success strategies, policies, practices, both at the institutional level and in the partnership between the community college and the four-year receiving institution. Does anybody want to share who said not present? And to see where you are with it, or wondering why it's not present? Anybody brave enough to talk about it? No raising hands. Wow, y'all are quiet this morning. Okay. All right, next one. Prospective transfer students from community college engage with pre-transfer advising provided by the university either at the community college campus or the receiving campus or virtually. This one should be pretty high with y'all. Yeah. Does anybody have an example? Did it change with COVID? Did it become virtual and it wasn't virtual before? I see nods. Yeah. That's what it was like at UCLA. You had to sign up at UCLA at 8 a.m. on a paper sheet for an appointment later in the day. That's how you made an appointment. You had to show up at the office. What?
You know what we learned too, which was so interesting, is that When we went virtual and we started seeing students from the rural campuses, and that's when there was an aha moment of we're not reaching students in the rural campuses. And so students are still asking for virtual advising, but we're doing some of that outreach more intentionally because we just didn't know what we didn't know. We knew who we were serving, we didn't realize who we were not serving.
Exactly. Transfer
I
team.
got a sticker.
Yeah, she got a sticker. But this is important. This is really important because we are in a moment right now where we have an opportunity to really disrupt all of this stuff and change old systems that have been that way for years and years and years just because, I don't know, somebody didn't want to deal with tech, right? I mean, that's the reality. You know, we all ran on Zoom. I had to, if I'm training the office on Zoom, that's a problem. And you reached, I mean, this is what we're always talking about is who are we not hearing from? You know, I know the students who walk in the door frame every day, but who are we not hearing from? And that's what that did. I love that. Okay. Dedicated transfer student advisors at the university support transfer students during and after the transition from community college to bachelor's degree and beyond. Now I want to see what this one is because, oh wow, this is awesome. Okay, someone has to tell me what's established. And when I'm talking about support, I'm talking about all the way through the transfer experience at the four-year institution, career, prep, grad school prep, whatever life after that that degree is going to be. What is the advising structure for that? Anybody? I mean, there's got to be somebody because a lot of people put established. Come on, y'all. I want to hear what you're doing. Oh, yay. All right. All right, you get the sticker first,
Thanks.
and then you go.
Appreciate it.
What's your name?
Jenny Sumner for UCF.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So we have coaches, actually, who work with our students pre-transfer, during transfer, and after transfer, both through the UCF Connect team, who's here today, by the way. Go UCF Connect. And then also UCF Online. So our digital learning students, our online students also have coaching that works pre, during, and after, all the way through graduation.
I love it. That's a great model. Not a lot of four-year institutions are doing that. That's one of the models I talk about all the time. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. All right, we're going to keep going. Now we are going to, let's see, I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to go to Pathways. So Pathways is basically includes all the stuff we talk about. This one should be really quick because I bet you all in this state have this down. So program maps indicate opportunities for transfer students to engage in work-based learning, internships, clinical placements, study abroad, and other learning activities beyond the classroom. So this is like high-impact practices. What is in place for transfers to ensure that they have the access to these high impact practices? Oh, have I not started it? Are you waiting on me? Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. I don't know. I don't know what I did. Okay. Now it should be live. Maybe. Yep. Oh, you do? Oh my gosh. Okay, take your time. Wow, I didn't know it did that on the survey. That's a bummer. I'll give you a minute. Nice. I'm telling you, you'd be surprised. When I do this, it's a lot of not present across the country, a lot of don't know, some beginning. All right, I'm just going to give you a few minutes because I know you have to answer all of them. All right, this is great. So clearly you've got a lot going on with these sort of high impact practices, which is great. Kind of like what Jenny was sharing with us about coaches and about coaching folks along the transfer experience. Your faculty are meeting regularly. I love that. Some folks don't know if their faculty are meeting. Is that because you're not talking to faculty, or why would you not know? Oh yes, somebody.
Talking about community colleges or the...
Both. All right. Are they meeting, both of them, together and in cross-sector and within the departments? That's good if they're meeting regularly and they're meeting their counterparts to share these expectations and update things. Is there anybody who wants to talk a little bit about maybe what they're not seeing or why they don't know if faculty are meeting? Yeah, okay, I'm coming back up.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, what's your name?
My name is Jim. I'm in a small two-year school in South Central Florida, and I'm sort of the Dean of Arts and Sciences, so I'm probably the biggest proponent of transfer on our campus, but I think as much as we're doing some things, we're way behind on a lot of things, and I don't think we're doing any of this, especially not at our college itself. So we got a lot of work to do, I think.
Well, ask a lot of questions today, because there's a lot of people that have it established here, and maybe they can talk about their...
Well, I'll say one thing. We do have a partnership with the USF Fuse, and we want one with UCF very much, and FGCU, if FGCU is here. And I've talked to FGCU, I've talked to UCF, but haven't gotten very far with either of them. Well, FGCU we've gotten part of the way, but we need more to do. Anyway, and so with USF we're probably the most developed, and we're doing some of the, they do the, where they have virtual transfer people on their side, and we have some on our side, but I think a lot of these things that you're talking about, we're way below. We're not quite there yet.
All right, that's part of it. You got to learn about it. That's why you're here today, to grow with each other. We're learning together about all of this stuff, right? Okay, a little bit more. Course schedules. I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to go to. I like that it's funded. That's great. Sorry, I'm reading it. Okay, I'm going to go to advising now. So give you a second to fill this out. After this, I'll get out of here. We'll go back to the slide deck. Yeah.
Just let me know I escape.
Awesome. Thank you. I was going to read them all, but then if you're reading them all, I don't want to confuse you. After this, we're going to talk a little bit about what it is that you can do at your institutions and what it is we need to do as a state to get up on some of this stuff. Because you still have wiggle room. I mean, a lot of y'all are doing it, but you're here today to share information, share knowledge, share resources. Okay, so advisors at the community college and university use data to reach out proactively to prospective and current transfer students who they've not met with, to ensure students have the guidance and resources they need. This is great. Does anybody who's advanced or established want to explain kind of what the process is, what the system is of sharing the data? Yeah. Oh, yay. Hi. What's your name?
Jessica Lopez, and I work with Florida Atlantic University. A pleasure to join you all here. We have wonderful partners with our state college institutions. I'm going to provide one example with Broward College. I know I have my friends here from Broward College joining, but one of the challenges we see is that a lot of transfer students get to the application process and connect with us a little late unless they are in our LINK program, which is our enhanced pathway. So in partnership with Broward College, we work together on messaging to their students. So when they reach 75% of their degree requirements, if they have indicated that they are planning to transfer to FAU, an email is sent by the Broward College advisors to the students, letting them know that it's time to connect with FAU to start their transfer process. So with that, we hope that we get the students to engage with us earlier so that they are able to have a more smoother transfer experience.
Well, and that's what the research says, right? Is the earlier advising that you can get with transfer students, the more success there is. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, I'm going to keep going because I want to hear what y'all are kind of thinking about today. Oh, this is so exciting to see. I'm going to learn so much today, y'all. But you should know that you're like way, way, way ahead a lot of the country. Okay, leaders ensure advisors have the resources and support they need to guide transfer students effectively at scale. So, you know, I think probably with resources and funding, we have a little work to do, but that's pretty normal. All right, y'all, I'm going to go back to a couple of things. I'm not going to go over models because you're advanced. You've got the models down. Now it's about what are you doing to engage the students, and what are you doing to kind of work together towards that 60,000 K or 60K that are sitting there that have degrees, have completed community college, and probably want to transfer. And to think about what's going on there. Yeah, no problem. So we have a lot of transformational models that we've seen. Direct Connect is one of them. You know, you've probably heard of Advance in Nova and Mason, the Northern Virginia Community College and Mason. If you haven't, they're a great program. You should look them up. And we have a lot of other programs that I will keep in this slide deck so that you can see them. But when you're looking at all of these and you're considering pathways, prioritization, advising, these are big chunky things, right? But within them all, you all know what it is. Advising early, often, throughout the process, PD for advisors, you know, communication channels so that we know when students are stopping out or not being on track. For pathways, we know what that looks like. Pathway maps, but pathway maps that maybe center the student. They're not just about course numbers, but they're about like the student experience and the journey. And then prioritization, everything from funding to communications to data. That one's huge. When we do the playbook over, that one's gonna be split up, I'll tell you. Because you need partnership, you need data, you need communications, and those need to be separate than just prioritization. So where do you think you need to improve, or where you can improve as an institution and then as a state? We already got one answer. We're gonna try to make connections and relationships today, right? What else are you looking towards? As a state? Michael, do you have plans for the consortium of where you want to go next?
I think what we're learning through the consortium is that we need to do a better job as institutions of communicating the data that we all have institutionally and create a statewide data sharing agreement in some way so that we can figure out exactly where our students are and where they need to be. And then as we make advances on our campuses with, say, articulation agreements or course mapping, that we don't hide that together. That's not proprietary information. That should be something that's shared across a large number. And that's what we're discussing amongst our 3 institutions with our articulation platform technology that we're trying to develop on the USF campus and then filter out throughout the state, is that as we have those rules come online, that they're not kept in-house, that they're actually kind of filtered and shared so that we can expand that number of options that our students have to begin with. And then they'll feel much more confident that they're getting the right information just in time.
I love that. Here.
Oh, sticker.
Yeah. Any other feedback or thoughts as a state? I love that. Oh, yes, another one. Which one sticker do you have? Success. Okay, champion. We're going with champion. That is
For the stickers, just in it for the stickers.
Hey, well then you deserve that.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to take the first question there, well, maybe as a state as well. So I think we have good communication strategies in place. Where I think we could do a better job is helping the student to understand almost like the return on the investment, the why behind the importance of transferring, the why in terms of staying on track, the why of getting those major readiness pieces that they need in order to successfully go through the pathway, complete the pathway, and graduate on time.
When you're talking to students now, what do you talk about as the value to them?
Well, so on the coaching perspective, we try to get that individual personalized perspective. So we get the why for that student. So each and every individual student, we start to understand the why. And then from a coaching perspective, we come back to that why as a motivating factor. But from either a state or even institution or together, maybe doing that on a grander scale. The importance of transfer here, again, the why behind it, the return on investment pieces of it. So we do, I think, great jobs at individual communication, particularly from the coaching standpoint of what we're trying to do. But holistically, I think we might be able to do a better job around all of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, oh, yeah, I'll go get a sticker.
Oh, no, thanks. Kind of piggybacking, I'm Diana Rodriguez. I'm actually the academic supporter over at UCF Connect. And I have the pleasure to work with a lot of my colleagues here, despite being in different departments. But I did kind of want to tangentially related to what Jenny's saying regarding having our students understand the value. When we're talking value, the students are going to be thinking money-wise and that investment in themselves. So where I'm wondering if, to answer the first question, improving institution-wise, looking at the data at financial aid and how our first-time, FTICs are getting rewarded certain things at financial aid that our transfer students are not, and that at the end of the day, it's no secret finances are going to be a barrier to our students. So actually, the lovely Deborah Bradford right behind you is working with our data analyst, Jessica Lovelace, who couldn't be here today, looking at specifically the data regarding financial aid and how we are dispersing our financial aid between our first-time college students, and that's something that we're only just starting to peel that layer. But I implore everyone here to start asking those questions. Hey, financial aid, what's going on? And let's get data behind too, because we may or may not have heard that it is equitable, but the numbers don't lie, people.
Oh my gosh, Dana. Yeah, absolutely. And there are some great models out there, not very many, but there are some models where institutions are working together and collaborating to ensure that the cost doesn't change, right, across the transfer pipeline. That's tough because, four-year institution tuition is usually more. But there are some schools that are partnering and working on those kind of initiatives, like the Promise programs and things like that. So there are a couple of them in the rest of this deck, so check those out. Is there anybody from financial aid in here? So that's another thing. Next year, we're going to have a lot of financial aid people here. But yeah, it's a problem. It's a national problem. Like, we really should have a national model, but don't even get me started on that. All right, I should probably wrap up. I'm not getting any signs yet, but...
Sure.
Okay, I'm going. Okay, these are all the models, and you'll see these at some point when you browse through this. Okay, I guess we're kind of past this, but are there big things that you're here for today? Like, what are the big things that you want to glean out of today? What are the like big things you hope you can take back to your campus, like a financial aid model that works for transfers? Other big, bold ideas that you really want to explore today? Ooh, yay. What's your name?
I'm Stacy with the University of Central Florida. One thing that I've heard a lot about is performance-based funding and how transfer students are not represented as highly as FTIC, so that may relate to the support towards transfer students. I know that's probably not very PC of me to say in this room full of Florida State University and college, but it's a true thing. And I think until the performance-based funding is equitable, it's hard to be equitable at the state university side. So that's just yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to say it. And I really wanted to sticker.
Oh, okay.
So thank you. Okay, thanks.
See, this is your last chance, folks. All right, back here. I wanted to say on that front, just, one of the things that we're seeing with the transfer intensive is just, where things used to be kind of competitive, institutions are working together. And this is the model that you're creating. I saw, beautiful dress. That's right. I was like, she's got a dress, beautiful dress. There you go. And that.
So I work with high impact practices. So I am looking for strategies to get transfer students specifically involved in those. Yeah.
Love it. Do you have any programs right now that you're working on? Internships. Service learning. Oh, I love that. Well, I hope you have I'm happy to talk about a couple of programs that I've seen, especially in research, study abroad, and also the service learning front. So I'm happy to talk about it. Any other things? Now, what's one thing you can do tomorrow for transfer? Other than celebrate Transfer Student Week. But that's okay. That's okay. You gotta get a sticker anyway. I think I'm out of champions, but you know where to find me. Anything else? Anything else that you want to do tomorrow?
I would challenge everybody in this room to sit down with some students and ask some of these very questions to actual live physical students. And you'd be surprised at how quickly they will tell you exactly the way that they feel and they won't hold back. Whereas today we were like, I don't know if I should out myself about emerging, but they'll tell you what's up.
100%. They're the experts in the moment, right? They're navigating our systems right now. Talk to them. What's going on with them?
Sorry, real quick, I was just curious if, so over at UCF, we have developed very small but mighty the Transfer Student Academic Advisory Council. So we have this little council. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm plugging. I actually... Forgive me for not having all the information. I'm actually the newest on our team, so bear with me. It's only been 3 months. But yeah, I'm running the TSAC, as we're calling it, and the way we kind of got together with different departments, for example, UCF Online Learning, Tau Sigma, anything related to any transfers, we're targeting where are our transfer students. Even the people that work the desk at our transfer center have recommended, hey, we noticed this student is active and wants to get involved. So anytime there's little things in there, I'm like, get that student's name, send me their email, and we contact that student to see if they're interested in joining our council. And that's exactly what we're doing. We meet once a month, and they are the eyes and ears on campus, and they get to express what is their experience, what did they wish that they had, what do they hear from their peers. So I'm curious if any of their, if the other institutes kind of have a council made up of transfer students.
Anybody else?
I just have a question for, can students from your participating transfers?
Prospective transfers,
yes.
Can they join?
Miss Angie Smith can prospective transfers. That is a fantastic question. And we actually have our first hire we have a master's student. We did have that conversation. Well, are they, should they be on the council? They're in the master's program, but at the end of the day, a transfer is a transfer.
Yeah.
So we are looking at the possibility of having a prospective or
Oh, I love that.
pre-enrolled transfer student.
Yes.
And also an alumni. So to get that.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I love it. So
Start looking at expanding.
I love that. So this is a game changer. I know centering the student is kind of a, it's just like a cliche thing we always say, like student centered. Having these focus groups where you or advisory boards or whatever it is, events where you've got prospective transfer students from your partner colleges, you've got current transfers who are living through the experience right now, and then alumni who've either recently or not so recently graduated, that gives you so much insight because they're the ones that are experiencing it. I love that. And then I had one other thought about the value proposition. Is anybody here in like a cabinet level lead or a college president? No? Okay. What do you think the value proposition for transfer is for them? If they were here, how would you make the case?
Well, yeah, I think back to performance-based metrics.
Performance-based metrics, okay.
But then I think all of the peers have brought their philosophy of success. So I think that our cabinet level certainly articulate. Oh, sorry.
What does that mean, student success?
Well, funny you mention that because we're actually putting together a philosophy statement of student success on our campus, both for students as a whole and then transfers as well. So we have a specific transfer student philosophy around success. But back to the point, I think certainly the performance-based metrics that Stacy was referencing earlier, but then also the success of our students, making sure that those students, as you mentioned, have that social mobility and are able to contribute to the institution, are able to get engaged, have that sense of belonging as well at the institution, I think would be key for our cabinet leaders, at least from the ones that I know.
That's good to hear, the moral imperative. Is that what you were going to talk about?
Yeah, and also the piece about the equity of our students who have had challenges, more diverse students, all sorts of diversity, to look after them and make sure that they persist and graduate, along with the enrollment.
Yeah, along with enrollment. All right, y'all, I think I'm getting a sign that I'm supposed to wrap up. Oh, okay, that was tough.
It's hard to hide in this room.
It is. No, it's all right. It's all right. But that's it. This is really, I just wanted to get into a conversation with you all about what's going on for you, what you're thinking about today. You're killing it out there. You are. I'm telling you. Those, when I ask other institutions, other states those questions, we're getting like, not at all, don't know, beginning, right? No one's in 50% of emerging in advance, right? Which is why I didn't spend much time on it, because like, y'all are doing it. But there's still room. And you're so much ahead. You've got so much to build on. And it's exciting to watch. So I can't wait to keep learning from you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. This is pre-Cafecito, Heather, so I'm a little worried at 3:05 what's going to happen ultimately. It's in the water up in Maine. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. Aspen is such a great partner to so many of our institutions, and we certainly thank you for all your time and effort and coming out and stickers and the whole piece. All right, while our next group of presenters this morning is setting up their presentation, we had like a whole backstage thing, and we had to move rooms. It became like you get to watch the sausage being made while this is happening. So this is always a lot of fun. This feels like we're breaking the fourth wall, or where we talk directly to you. We're going to actually do a couple of raffles. Where are the prizes? What do we have here? Oh, geez. So it's a grab bag. So, okay, throughout the day, how many do we want to do?
Like 3 or 4?
3 or 4? Okay. Get out your raffle tickets, people. We're raffling. Now, each one of these bags, I think, has a lot of swag, and then also, I think one has, a yacht, and then there's and then another one has, unfortunately, an expired timeshare. You have to... All right. So, let me see if I can see this, because I'm getting old. Wait, there we go. Turn it right side up. 091016. I mean, you're all here. 091016.
That's over there.
Hey! Come on down and get your more FIU stuff.
It's everybody from the consortium and FAU.
Hi, and who are you?
I'm Kimberly Gilchrist Winter, and I'm a transfer coordinator at FIU.
Hey, give it up. All right. Next one real quick. Oh, there's selfies going on back here. Fantastic. 090988. Hey, there we go. Awesome. Hi there. Oh, you'll introduce yourself here in just a second.
Yes, I'm Dalila Salvi. I'm with the CFI team.
Awesome. We're going to hear from CFI here in just a minute. All right, let's do one more, and then I think we're ready to start back up again. All right, 090992. Hey, Team Mint over there. Good deal. And who are you?
FIU Honors College, here to help our transfer students.
Hey, FIU Honors in the house. All right, without further ado, we're gonna keep this light and airy. I've had you all met Braulio a little earlier, but Tony Carvajal has been doing great work here in the state of Florida for many, many years, and continues to help educate us as a state on exactly how our tax dollars are at work and making things happen for the state of Florida. And they're here to present a little bit of the economic data that we're going to be really needing to think about. So take it away.
And yeah, I'll just add, thank you, Michael. I'll just add that, the focus and the question came up from Dr. Adams. Where are some opportunities for us to improve in our efforts to support students statewide? And I will tell you, in looking at the data, it's about closing degree attainment gaps, particularly for our black students in the state of Florida, and just making the case that that is an economic priority. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. It's all about being intentional. Tony?
So, Dr. Adams, we have cafecitos because we need to get to your level. I get it and stuff like that. But you had me going all over the place. So I used to speak 200 plus days a year, and then COVID came, and it was my dog, and he ran away. So I'm a little nervous, so I prepared my notes, and I'm going to cover those items. But she said so many great things that got me thinking. I want to actually start with some of the things that Dr. Adams had me thinking about. The first thing was, you may actually be suffering from success to some degree. And what I'm thinking about is two numbers. Right now, there are 293,000 people in this state that are looking for work. At the same time, though, that there are 526,000 jobs looking for people. You may actually be doing so well with your two-year degree that you're putting people into a marketplace immediately, providing the credentials that they need to get in a door, for example. Maybe it's in a nursing shortage, maybe it's in a manufacturing field, maybe it's in a technology area. And the marketplace is so hungry that that gap of 30 to 60,000 that was highlighted in our data might actually be a statement of success. So I want to start with that statement, because sometimes we've got to zag to understand the zig to some degree. What I'm going to be covering is some work that fortunately we got to do here in the state. I have a few questions about demographics, because I am not in the transfer student field per se, so I need to understand who's in here. Most important question that I have to ask first, are any of you with the media? So if I say whatever I'm going to say and you tweet it and I get fired, I'm going to have to go back to school. And I did graduate from FIU, by the way, my master's in public administration from here. But I'm going to need you to work with us on this. And sometimes we're going to have to go in different directions. So bear with me as I cover a few things. How many of you work for a university? How many of you are at a college two-year institution? How many of you are in economic development? Wrong, because the reality is that is absolutely what you all are in. Talent drives capital and drives jobs. You may be forgetting that the thing that you're trying to produce is not a person with a piece of paper, but you're trying to create a population that is ready for the marketplace. And that success statement that I mentioned at the very beginning doesn't get measured in the performance metrics that those presidents have to look at or respond to at the SUS or the college system level. So we can't beat ourselves up. But the other thing that came to mind as Dr. Adams was speaking this morning was this meme. You probably have seen it about the Firecats that were shot down during World War II, and they came back. And the story basically goes, you can look it up on Facebook. I'm getting it a little bit wrong, so don't worry about the specificity of this at the moment. They would look at all the airplanes that would land back on the carriers, and they'd be all shot up, and they'd be through the pilot's cabins and portions of the wings and part of the tail, and they were so worried about the pilots that they started having a conversation of sealing or reinforcing those parts of the plane, right? Those parts of the plane to protect the pilots, until somebody asked the question, well, these are the planes that actually came back. They're shot up in all these places, but where are the planes that aren't coming back shot up? Because those are the ones that we have to actually focus on. Those are the ones that we need to capture. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to start with a conversation about Sail to 60. Hopefully, if you're working in Florida, you understand the goal here. There is a basic notion that has been accepted at the state level and codified that we know that the workforce of tomorrow is going to require advanced degrees, certification, some sort of training post-secondary. And the state has set a goal of trying to achieve 60% of valuable degrees or certifications by the year 2030 in the population. Hopefully you know that that's out there. It's called Sail to 60. There's a number of different other imperatives that have been cast out by the state university system, by the college system, by the governor, talking about us being the #1 workforce and therefore the #1 training facility in the country, and getting there, and all the degrees absolutely matter in that. But do you know why? Well, one of the things that I asked Braulio not to do was tell you a lot about my background, because most of the times that doesn't matter. But one of the things that I have been doing over the last decade is serving as somewhat of a state futurist, but also as a part-time stink bomb thrower. And, I talk about things a little bit differently sometimes, and I just want to share how I perceive this particular perspective, because most of these start from this notion that the jobs of tomorrow are going to require some advanced training, right? That's the basic premise. But what if there were bigger pictures or other things that we had to address? And I'm very, very thankful that the Florida College Access Network asked us to look at the research question of where is it that we need to be going so that we can achieve that 60% metric? And I'm going to pare it down into two parts of this presentation. The first part is why that 60% goal matters, and the second part is, are we going to reach it or not? Is that okay with you all? All right, there is a QR code. I have no idea if that's going to work with our big heads in the way, but there's a TV in the back, and it'll be the last slide that I put up. So if you need this, I also have copies of the report, a few of them with me, but otherwise at floridataxwatch.org. Florida Tax Watch, by the way, doesn't immediately sound like the research institute that we actually are. What we do is public policy research. We are a think tank on broad issues, and the term Tax Watch kind of makes you think, oh, it's all about that sales tax or that property tax or that impact fee or something that you pay. And yeah, we do a good bit of that, but we have a broad range of topics that we cover. However, the mission space that we deal with absolutely has education and talent at its core to some degree, because you're the second largest portion of the budget. You may not feel it, and you may be worried about whether you get enough or you could do more. But the state invests a good bit of money, and that means every taxpayer in this state is counting on you to be successful. So I'm going to share a few ideas about the Sail to 60. I'm going to share a few ideas about the gaps. Braulio is going to follow up with some strategies. And we don't have stickers as far as I know. Do you have stickers? I didn't bring stickers. But if you want to throw something out at the end, then maybe we can talk Dr. Adams into sharing some of her stickers. So Okay, so here's goes. I think one of the things that Sail to 60 is about is actually the economic imperative for the state, the competitive imperative. Sure, at an individual level, people are going to have to be trained to get jobs. But at the macro level, that also means that we, if we're going to be a competitive state, are going to have to find a way to have our population, which drives jobs, which drives capital, which drives success, be that competitive workforce. So the degrees, even though in many ways they're just proxies for something else, they are, in my mind, a lot more than just a piece of paper and a pre-clearance. You are teaching people how to think, you're teaching people how to be resilient, and we're getting somewhere. But what's the economic imperative? If 60% of our population actually right now had degrees, 53.6 billion additional dollars would be in the hands of workers in this state. And that is year over year after that. $53 billion immediately. Our gross domestic product would actually increase by $59 billion approximately. Our tax income, the revenue that the state collects, which, by the way, yeah, I try to reduce it, that's part of my job, but at the same time I recognize all those dollars that come in to make that $110 billion budget that we have, we would immediately have $4.7 billion additional tax dollars available to apply to opportunities in this state. Now, you may have heard that we have a lot of revenue and we have a lot of reserves, and thankfully we do, because we're going to have to deal with some of that in Southwest Florida. We're going to have to deal with that some across the corridor and all the way up into the Northeast. But there's much more ahead that we could be investing in. If we look at things in only 1 year, we're missing the big picture of where we're going. So $53 billion additional dollars in the hands of individuals, and that's just at an average saving. So it's an economic imperative. It matters to the state. It's how we use and grow our economy. Failure, by the way, to keep up with all this sets us behind. Our economy right now is the 15th largest economy on the planet. That's a fantastic thing. We are pointed in the right direction, but there are some headwinds that could potentially slow our progress down. Now, most of you don't care as much about all these economic numbers that I'm throwing around. Maybe you do, but I live and breathe this every single day, because I'm trying to think about where my son, who just started at Florida State, is going to be working and doing well enough so that he can support his dad one day. I don't know. I'm going to actually share some stories about my son which help inform this presentation. I'm going to go to the second point. So at the macro level, the Sail to 60 has a big economic imperative. At the individual level, that $53 billion breaks down individual per individual. But there's a lot more to it than just that $53 billion in our economy. The benefits the individual realizes are not only additional dollars, but as you move up the income scale, your savings increase, right? Your dependence on social safety nets decreases. Your community ultimately benefits at a broader level. So the social safety net that supported you, or potentially if you were on the lower end of the scale, gets skewed. Here I'm going to deviate for just 1 second before I go to the third reason the Sail to 60 matters, and talk about an additional point that does not often get reflected very often. Most of you have seen that graph that the Department of Labor puts out that talks about as you get more degrees, your income goes up. And during hard times, your retention in a job also improves, right? The lower on the scale you are, the more likely you are to get fired, unless you go through COVID and you work at a grocery store. We absolutely need the people to go in there and stuff like that, right? So you've seen that scale. But have you seen this other scale? If you go to the report, the other data point that's in there is the top 60% disproportionately, the top 60% earners in this state disproportionately have degrees. Nobody's surprised by that, right? Nobody finishes the sentence on the other side. That means that the bottom 40% disproportionately do not have degrees. Look, this is an important thing to start getting out into the world, because you may immediately go into the workforce, but it's your long-term horizon that becomes part of these challenges. So far, I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't already know, but except that I am going to shift to some data points in just a second. There is more benefits. So we talked about the macroeconomic opportunities, the individual personal benefits, but there's also the benefits beyond the pocketbook. Those individuals who are able to have some savings, able to actualize a little bit differently in the communities, have better health, have more social fulfillment, greater community participation, vote at higher rates, and have, as important as anything else, better intergenerational outcomes. You change the cycle of an individual, you change the cycle of a community, and you change the cycles of families, and all of those build on top of each other. So all of this is precursor. You're nodding, you probably understand all these things, you sell this yourself. Let's talk about, though, those airplanes that don't come back, because that's what we have to potentially be looking at. In the report, one of the things that I really enjoyed looking at was, so who is not coming back on these flights? What you see on this chart, which may be a little difficult to read, is a distribution based on ethnic and minority or demographic differences. The folks that complete post-secondary education, or basically their highest educational attainment, is represented on these graphs. So the bottom of this chart, and I'm colorblind, so they're all blue to me. I don't care. You pick whatever it is. But the bottom part is high school, okay? The scale is on the left-hand side. The highest degree earned for some of these populations at the statewide level, 34% of our population stops with a high school degree. Look across this board, you'll see that some of these populations, like the Asian population or the white population, or the AIAN, this is a fun acronym all the time, but these folks graduate at more or less the same level as the state. But go to the Hispanic and the Black populations in the state of Florida, and you see that the highest level of attainment, 42% of those particular cohorts, their highest level of attainment is high school. We're going to talk about the transfer portion, and that's going to matter in this conversation. But I want to put a punctuation point here, because it is very possible that the same reason that 42% is not going down is the same reason that some of those airplanes are not coming back in. Whatever those pressures were that they were able to overcome at that first step might be poking their head back in 2, 3, 4 years after. And we might need to think about slightly different things. Braulio is going to help me with some suggestions, and we're going to have a conversation about a little bit higher. Start at the top. You'll see that the graduate degrees, smaller population with the Hispanic and Brown populations, higher across the board and all that, but that's because for a graduate degree you got to have a baccalaureate degree, right? So let's look at that baccalaureate and that AA gap. You'll see some differences here, where at the BA degree, only 13% of Black, 18% of Hispanics, as opposed to 21% of statewide numbers. These probably are not surprising to you, but we're talking about how do we transfer up this pipeline from that 22 to the 11 to the 13. 22 being some college, 11 AA, 13 BA. For the Hispanics, 17, 11, 18. What are those transition points? What are the things that are standing in the way? Braulio's got some answers. You all got some answers. Today is about sharing those answers, building those systems that Dr. Adams was talking about, building on the successes that we have. So we're number one in the country. We've got some great things going on. But it also means we don't have a competitor. How do we keep improving? The way we sharpen our saw is with each other in this process. So stay on top of that. I want to share one more slide, and then I'm going to pass it over to Braulio to keep us on track. And then I've got some of those ZAG observations again that I'm gonna throw back in. Actually, I'm going to throw one in right now because this is what I don't necessarily want you getting me in trouble, but it's an honest statement, so even if you repeated it, I feel comfortable with it. We are in a state and in a country and in a time where disaggregating data like this gets us in trouble to some degree. We know that. So yes, while we have to get smarter with all these data points, we're having a harder time facing a world where we share these data points. The advantage of an organization like Florida Tax Watch is we don't lobby, we don't seek appropriations, we don't necessarily like getting punched in the face every particular day, but somebody's got to tell the truth, and we're going to try and stay committed to sharing these types of numbers so that we can get out to the world. You've got a hard enough job to figure out how these planes come back and get out again. So that's one of those challenges that we have. It's a best practice. It's absolutely the way for success, but the world is moving in the opposite direction to some degree. All right. So the sail to 60 is not a point in time, even though the goal is to achieve the 60% goal by 2030. When you look over time, you can't just achieve it once, cross your fingers, and say, yay, we've got success. If you think about it over time, and we constantly have to keep moving up to the 60, the strategies that we are currently using, the percentages of graduations, even across all those populations, what's called business as usual, the left side of these two dates, this is 2020, 2030, 2040, does not achieve the 60% goal. The only way to achieve those goals at this moment is to activate populations that are not engaged in the higher education pursuit. It is particularly those minority populations that were on the right side of the last scale. We can achieve this if we focus on Hispanics and brown populations in the state, or other proxies, whether it's low income or first generation or any other number of different things that we know are correlated. So success today and success tomorrow actually requires different strategies. But wait, there's more. No Ginso knives, no stickers, but there is one more fact that matters. You know demographics. You've been studying populations for a little while. You also probably are well aware that the population is actually changing. The U.S. and Florida in particular looks more brown as well as more gray. And I make that point for a particular reason. So as the population of this country becomes more diverse, another way of saying that is that there is more minority representation, I will actually argue that the only way to achieve the 60% goal is to engage more minority students in the success pattern. So, this is the kind of stuff that will get us kicked out, right? Okay, this will get us in trouble, but these are the realities that we've got to deal with. You know how to solve some of these problems. The one statement that really stood out as I was listening to Dr. Adams this morning, and when I look at these numbers, is if you can touch a student, you can achieve success. It's the ones that we can't reach. It's the ones that we are losing at the bottom end. It's the ones that aren't transferring in. It's that 40,000 or that 30,000 gap. Those are the individuals that we've got to find strategies for. I've got some ideas, but I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, who, by the way, I've known, I was trying to calculate if it's 15, 12, it doesn't matter. We've known each other through a number of different iterations. He'll tell you that I can't keep a job, which is also a true statement. But he's grown through his process professionally. We met originally through some work in advancing the advancement of Hispanics in the state. I'm very glad to be partnering with Helios on a number of different projects, but more importantly, Braulio himself is just somebody who lives, breathes, and understands this. And kudos to everything that you and Helios do. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Let's give Tony a round of applause. Tony, I share your sentiments. You've been a leader at the Florida Chamber Foundation and twice, actually, right? And at the Florida Tax Watch, and your voice on making the connection between education and the economy is really important for our state. Let me grab that clicker.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. This is not my first slide. We might need to upload the Helios slides. That is nice. Maybe, you know. What does that tell you? You know.
When you could
While they're setting that up, I'll go ahead and get started with a few comments about some of the work at Helios that we've been doing from a strategic planning standpoint. So we, as one of the largest education foundations in the state, who has really been trying to figure out how to be more impactful, right, as a foundation. Our first 6, so we've been around 18 years operationally, right? And the first half of that, I think, is building a new nonprofit, a public charity, trying to figure out how to be a grant maker, try to figure out how to be a public, a community engaged impact organization. And then I'd say the second half of that was really applying a more systemic change type of strategy rather than funding isolated programs. We've moved into the systemic change world, integrating both grants and policy and our research and evaluation capacity into the work, and really beginning to recognize the unique differences between the two states that we serve, right, and really implementing that. I would say over the last 6 months, we've asked ourselves, what's our responsibility over the next 5 years in the area of being more intentional, right? From the beginning, we've said we're focused on first-generation low-income minority students, and through our partnerships, we're promoting equity, right? But beginning of this year, we're studying the data, and we're seeing gaps for some subpopulations trending in the right direction, particularly our Hispanic students over the last 20 years. Those gaps have gotten smaller, right? But the largest, most persistently wide gap in our state is that of our black students. And we can't ignore that. And so we've decided as a foundation that we have a role to play to engage our institutions, to engage communities, to figure out through partnership how we can begin to close some of these gaps. And we don't believe that over the next 5 years we're going to work to close these gaps. I mean, we're going to actually close the gaps. What we're saying is over the next 5 years, what we do as a foundation will have, and not only as a foundation, but as an education community, what we do over the next 5 years will impact students for the next 25 years in terms of the trajectory. And so our goal is to be that independent voice, pusher, right? Change agent or constructive disruptor, I guess, to pivot, to help our institutions and our systems recognize the responsibility we all have to be intentional in closing the black student achievement gap, right? If we can pivot, if we can get all of our institutions to develop a black student success strategy, right? Every institution should have a black student success strategy that is unique to serving the black population. Because what we've seen is if we put all the resources into the first-gen low-income minority bucket, for some reason, I don't know why, the resources get allocated in a way that is disproportionate, that is not the way it needs to be invested across subgroups. So we're going to do our part to push a black student success strategy as the Helios Education Foundation, and we need your partnership and your support to so that we can actually move that ball forward. Our mission is only accomplished through partnership, right? So we can't give out $1 without partners bringing to us aligned strategies and efforts that we can work together on. So I just want to acknowledge that. And we will, do I need to email you the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, happy to email it to you if you need to. Tony, why don't you put that slide back up, because I can work off that.
Yep.
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I don't want to slow you down on the Helio slides, though, if that's going to slow you down. Yeah.
Anybody shocked by what we've said so far? Is this what you want to do? Is that why you're here?
I just wanted to point out that economic argument, we were talking about what is it that's going to drive our presidents and our cabinet forward? And I'll tell you, I know the moral imperative is what we want it to be, right? But it's that economic imperative and that institutional health imperative and that state imperative, and that's really driving what I hear when I'm in the rooms with the presidents and the cap leads. They morally, of course, moral imperative, but really it's the money.
Yeah, and by the way, no money, no mission. It works in nonprofits, it works at universities, it works at colleges, it works in businesses. You've got to drive that bottom line to some degree. So I'll give you one of the things that I was going to say at the end that may not be exactly in your space, but one of the reasons I say you're economic developers. If you want to improve the lot for Florida, which improves the lot for colleges and universities, you got to create jobs in this state so that we don't have an upside down system. You try to do it by creating the supply side of this, putting students out in the workforce, but recruiting entrepreneurs, recruiting other businesses, expanding within a region, leveraging the creative world of work that we have with virtualization and remote work is actually going to do as much to drive the college and university system forward as it is going to drive our economics. They are absolutely connected. Whether it's real capital, political capital, social capital, economic capital, work capital, they're all connected. So.
We're working on it, but. And I'll go through my slides really quickly just so that we can stay on time once they're up. I'll skip several slides and get to the point. So I appreciate you understanding that. We're also used to all of us are in the systems, right? We're used to talking about change that needs to happen in policy and practice and big P policy, small P's policy and all that. But sometimes we forget that sometimes we forget about the individual level of the impact of our work, right? And that's what keeps us going. If we can continue to remind ourselves of the individual impact of helping a student or a child who's born with nothing, right? And I'm not suggesting that all students of color are born with no. If it were not, in my view, for the HBCUs historically in this country, there would not be a black middle class. That's sort of what I believe. But for those black and brown kids who are born in this country with zero, we are making an impact for those that we support and help them get ready for college and be successful in college. We're helping them become the labor that's necessary for them to build their wealth, right? First generation wealth. Because there's only three things our market system cares about, right? Trying to connect the economy to the individual. Land, capital, and labor. So if you're born with zero, you don't have land. You don't have capital. All you have is your human capacity to build the skills you need so that as a laborer, as someone who's entering into the labor market, you're prepared to earn what you need to earn to begin to develop your wealth, right? And to begin to position yourself to buy land and to invest in areas so that you develop capital. That's the power of education, right? That's why we do what we do. And here's the other thing: we didn't choose the market system, right? We're born into it. So every time you walk out of that door, I don't care how good you look, I don't care how good you smell, I don't care what you're listening to in terms of your music, and you're walking out into a market system that only cares about those three things primarily, right? And so you're either in a position to be a thriving laborer in the market. Some say entrepreneurial is another avenue. But for the most part, those are the three areas. And that's why this work is really important, because we have populations in Florida that are not, particularly those who are born with nothing. As Americans, as people who are, these are our neighbors, right? These are our kids. They deserve to have the opportunity to engage effectively in the marketplace. So we have to remember that we're on that battlefield as well, in addition to changing the education policies, and we are changing lives through our work, right? So
let me throw out one other data point that I'm going to talk about the value of coming out of this entire post-secondary pipeline. I talked about how many open jobs there were relative to the number of people that were looking for jobs, but let me put it in a slightly different perspective. And this is from a report that MC hasn't put out yet in Florida, but it has put out at a national level. It's called the demographic drought. And one of the things that we're recognizing, and we already know to some degree was happening, is that we are losing people in the workforce. In Florida, over the next decade, we're going to lose 1.2 million individuals in our workforce because they're going to age out of it to some degree. We've seen that. So we've got to backfill that. Due to federal policies, we're also limiting the number of immigrants that are moving into this country or are providing them work access, and that is going to be another group of population that is going to impact at all different levels, by the way, at every job entry to advance. But the third and the most disturbing thing that is going to be built out is what is called the unengaged workforce, that 16 to 24-year-old student or young adult at the moment that is not engaged. I'm not sure if you knew this, but it seems that it's about 43% of the population between 16 and 24 right now aren't doing anything. They're not in school. They don't have work. They're not counted in our economy. So kick them off your couch and get them back out, and I don't know what's going on. Where do you think they're going? That unengaged number is an issue that is not just impacting, obviously, education system, it's the entire workforce. So here's what all of that means. By 2040, while we need, as Dr. Preston was pointing out, 1.6 million more trained professionals to meet the labor force needs, in just a little bit longer span than that, we're going to lose 3.4 million workers in Florida, period. So if the workforce shortages right now are potentially peeling people away from advancing, the pressures are only going to grow. So I mentioned it's MC, but now they're called Lightcast. You should look for that report coming out soon. It'll be talking about Florida numbers. They do have demographic drought at a national level. Now, where we're going with this presentation is talking about what you can be doing. So maybe you could be thinking about some of the suggestions of where we can close the gaps, particularly for Black student achievement. Or the initial entry into the whole system. So now if we only had a millennial here, somebody in 16 to 24 who knew how to deal with all these things, we'd solve this and no problem, but we got Braulio that we're trying to deal with. So. Yes? Great question. So are these, so the comment, if I'm not mistaken, I have no stickers, but I just walked up so I could see who I was talking to. Are these conversations happening at the K-12 level? Because we have figured out that that whole pipeline matters, right? Are we going through this whole system and starting it? Short answer is yes. They are being held at that level with about the same level of success as when you are talking to a high school graduate about, getting a job or continuing on. They are success. We've got to leverage the willing to some degree. But while the world has become really, really negative and everybody feels that the next generation is not going to be better than the last generation, I do not believe that statement, by the way. The next generation is actually positioned by just the numbers that I said, 3.4 million gap. They're going to end up being better. It's just not at the very start, potentially. They're going to do a little bit better. But how do we tell those messages? We've talked about mentoring. We've talked about cradle to career pipelines that talk about career pathways and what those pathways look through the education system so you can get in there. I think the question is going to have to be, how do we improve it? You really don't want me doing all the riffing because the types of things I say are potentially off script, so to say. New York Times had an article this last weekend. You might not have read it because it talked about suicides, but it had a line in there that really stuck with me. Teen suicides going up, and I think the article's name was something more or less along the lines of what are the teenagers telling us? And there's a disillusionment in this process. And that disillusion statement also goes into the workforce. Right now, we're trying to tell people about all the jobs of tomorrow, which we have no way of understanding because in 5 to 10 years, it's absolutely radically different. And honestly, somebody coming out of high school probably is better trained for the world of tomorrow than I with my master's degree. So we don't even know how to talk to each other to some degree. It is more important then that they, when they are in contact with you, have a way not only to ground themselves in lifelong learning, but ground themselves to the workforce so that they understand the transition through the process and then how they can succeed, and just as importantly, bring us with them. Right.
So my PowerPoint is not going to, you're not going to see my PowerPoint today. All right, that's just not happening. I mean, I have it in the back, but there's like, look, guys, we're all done here. But one of the things I wanted to share, and maybe at some point I'll share a few slides sort of offline with you, but what we're focused on, and what I hope we can all be focused on, is when you think about the power of transfer and the statement that 80% of our students want to earn a bachelor's degree, and when only 13% of black residents have a 4-year degree as their highest level of education, that's not going to get us where we need to get to as a state, right? I mean, at the 2-year degree level, we're at parity practically, right? So we're killing it. To your point, we're killing it at the 2-year degree level. 11% of most groups, with the exception of our Asian residents, 2-year degree, 11% of all groups have a 2-year degree as their highest level of education. But when you go above that, and this is why access to the 4-year degree is critically important, because we know that the data suggests that 4-year degree is what will allow an individual, from an employment standpoint, to withstand the ups and downs of the economy. The unemployment rate for those holding a 4-year degree when the economy goes to the floor, the unemployment rate is pretty steady for those who have a 4-year degree. And so the question for all of us is, how do we leverage our success in our success as a state in the transfer space? How do we leverage that to change this number? That's the opportunity for all of us. Because if we can fix that, and you can see that chart begin to become equitable, right? Fairly distributed. Imagine the power of our state. 15th largest economy, Tony, is that what you said? Yes, sir. Imagine the power of our state from a labor perspective, from how we distribute the labor among all of us. Because right now, this reflects a misdistribution, an unfair distribution of labor in the marketplace, right? If we change that, we'll be the #1 state on a long list of indicators, right? So while politically we don't want to talk about it, we can't sit back and say, okay, let's not talk about it. We got to talk about it. Now, I wanted to couple that with one other point. There was a slide that I was just really hoping I had the opportunity to share with you. And it lists out all of our universities, our public universities, and the total number of bachelor's degrees awarded to black students annually. So it was a bar graph of all of our universities. with the total number of degrees awarded annually, and then comparing the total number to how many of those numbers are actually awarded to black students. FAMU, who is obviously our public HBCU in the state, they are number 3 in the state in terms of the total number of degrees awarded to black students. Now, we know how, when you compare the budget between FAMU and all of our other universities, they are hitting the ball at a high percentage, right, when it comes to that indicator. UCF does really good comparatively. Our 2 flagship public universities, University of Florida and Florida State, are not producing where they need to be. They're not at where they need to be in terms of the total number of degrees awarded to black students. Florida only awards 5%, only 5% of their students that walk across that stage earning that 4-year degree, only 5% are black. And at FSU, only 8% are black. So system-wide, FAU is doing a great job. Go Owls! So it's UCF, FAU, FAMU, USF. USF has a ways to go. All right. FIU, we have a way to go, right? But FIU's up there too, relatively speaking. But the large urbans in Tampa and Miami, we have more work to do. So I'll sum up with this, and we're not too far behind. We're 10 minutes after 11, if my clock is right, if my watch is right. I think the message for this group is through partnership, through the work of the consortium, Tax Watch. How can we leverage the success, in summary, to change this? And I think we're all on the same page. I think we can do it. So thank you so much. And I'm happy to, if there's any 1 or 2 questions on those points, I'm happy to speak to them. Yeah.
I'm just curious, the some college credit but no degree.
You get a raffle ticket. I got no.
Oh, awesome! Thanks. So for the some college credit but no degree area, are there places that Helios is working with adult students to kind of get back in the swing of it? The 4-year institutions often don't have the structure in place to support working students. So just curious what's going on there.
We've done some work with University of Florida studying the re-enrollment, studying how best to engage students who recently stopped out. How do we get them back? But we're not doing a lot of work on those who have been out for a while. So there's a report out. Justin Ortegas, Dr. Ortegas at the University of Florida, it's called the Re-Enrollment Demonstration Project. And there's some really good insights on how to use incentives and to centralize support for those students so we can get them back. Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say nationally, this is Florida data, but nationally, it's those stop-outs who are also in minority groups because they're running out of financial aid, they have to go work, and then they might work a few years. So part of what we're trying to build at FIU, and it's happening to Florida Gulf Coast, I'm not sure about other partners, one of the ways to get these students back is giving credit for prior learning and honoring the competencies that students are picking up as being laborers, as working, and being able to have completion degrees that can be fast-tracked for students.
Reflect your life experience.
Yeah, reflect your life experience and life learning.
So if I had any closing comments, and Dr. Preston, I think we're going to end, if you don't mind, it would be use the success that you have and translate it into new places. It's important to understand context. Here's my closing context. This whole event, until yesterday, was going to be held in another place where we had everything perfectly aligned, all the slides, all the communications. Thank you for your patience throughout all this. There is some other stuff, you know that you were walked over to this building, but it's important to understand that context moves. We got to go to where people are, go to those planes that aren't coming back, aren't going in, and it's a great opportunity to leverage what you've got. The idea of everyone get one, the students that bring others along with them change a whole community, and I'd love to talk to anybody about these, but you're doing great stuff. We can't beat ourselves up for the successes that we have. We just got to take it to the next level. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. I'm just a trooper. There's nothing quite like making sure that the technology issues happen with one of your best partners. So that's always great. We are going to adjust the schedule and start lunch just a little bit later so that we can make sure that CFeed has an opportunity to show some of the great work that they're doing. And then we will release y'all for the first session. And those session times will go for the amount of time that they were scheduled for. It just might be scheduled just a little bit later. So if you are presenting, you don't need to run and go set up your room. That'll all be done. We'll just start this just a little bit later. Let's see, we're at 15 after, so once CFeed's done, then we will release you for their first sessions, and then we'll start lunch 40 minutes after those sessions begin. So, technology. Diana, just jump right into it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone. We're getting set up, but while we're doing that, thank you and good morning. It's such a pleasure to see everyone today and to be provided the opportunity to share some of our work. We're really excited about it. We hope you will be as well. So my name's Diana Pinar. I'm the director of the CFeed project, and some of you might be saying, well, I have no idea what CFeed is. Is it food? What is CFeed? And it's actually an acronym for the Central Florida Education Ecosystem Database, and nobody wants to say that, so we call it CFeed. But the CFeed project is a collaborative project among Valencia College, the University of Central Florida, the School District of Osceola County, and Orange County Public Schools, where we combine student data into our database. We look for patterns in our data research to determine areas where we can advocate for student interventions, program changes across the 4 institutions. So we're going to be sharing with you all today, what some of that might look like. But I'd like to introduce, I know we're trying to pull our technology together as well, but I'd like to introduce the members of the team that's with us today. We've got Ashton Terry. He's our research analyst with the School District of Osceola County. We also have Dalila Talby. She's our data consultant with our technical partner, Midtown Consulting. We're just pulling it up. Yay, technology. Well, I'm going to cover some of the key highlights that you'll be seeing in our presentation shortly, and some of that includes an increase in the transfer shock rate in the past year, which is not a good thing to see. The ability to target students who might be at risk for transfer shock, and the ability to identify students who are ready for a successful transfer but have not yet begun that process. Oh, there we go. Oh, I think it's over here. Yep. So this just outlines some of the research and the questions that we'll be referencing here today. And we'll be switching between this presentation and then going to some live data that we'll be able to share, which will be able to reflect some of the exciting findings that we've had. Okay, thank you. I'll just put that right there. But for those of you who attended last year's summit, you might remember that the CFEED presentation spoke about shock events being negative outcomes when we introduced the idea last year. But as shown here, shock events are disruptions within the transfer student's first term at UCF that can lead to attrition or delayed graduation. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to identify those and those students. Is it not on? Oh. Everyone's just...
Oh, they turn it off.
1, 2.
Yeah. Oh, so hopefully you all have been hearing me already without the mic. Okay, I'm loud enough. Good. All right. So CFEED's research has pinpointed 6 shock event situations that indicate a higher risk of negative outcomes. So the visual on this slide defines those 6 shock events. The first one is the first term UCF GPA drops 0.5 points from their cumulative Valencia College GPA. The first term UCF GPA is less than 2.5, withdrawing from all UCF courses, not receiving any UCF credits in the first term, not passing 6 or more credit hours, and enrolling full-time at UCF, but earning less than 12 credits. So the more characteristics we can identify that could lead to a shock event, the more time there would be to support these students and prevent one or more of these shock events. So now I'm going to turn this presentation over to Ashton for more detail. Oh, it's working now.
Good morning. I've had the pleasure not only to present today, but to hear from some excellent colleagues, and I had some takeaways that I think are going to transition great into CFEED's work. I heard Dr. Valdez talk about, the need to ensure that transfers are graduating, that it's expected and it's attainable, and it's our job to help. And everyone in this room has a certain job that ties to success of students. And then I heard Dr. Adams talk about transfer pathways need more reform, and it's extremely important. Then I heard Braulio and Tony talk about the continued need to ensure that ethnicity gaps are improving. So there's a lot of important work left to do. So we're talking about shock event rate. So we have a cohort from 2018 to 2022, over 16,000 students. And shock event rate from 2018 to 2021, you can see that smooth black line. It was pretty stable. And then all of a sudden it went, whoa! From 2021 to 2022, there was an 8% increase in shock event. And why that's alarming is because over half of attrited students have at least one shock event. So if you have one, the more likely you are to attrit, whereas only 30% of non-attritters had a shock event rate. So right off the bat, that should open some eyes and show why this research is important. CFEED is continuing to refine our ability to recognize shock events, and our model has predicted an increase this year. If you recall our presentation at last year's summit, we shared that shock events are an extremely important early measure in student experiences and transfer success. The actual increase of shock events has been even greater than what we initially projected in our model, which has taught the CFEE team that we have even further work to do. So put us on the agenda for next year, guys, when it comes to predictability of shock events so that we can help avoid long-term negative experiences that students may have post-transfer. Now we're going to go to the next slide and look at a cohort of students who transferred from Valencia to UCF this fall or are projected to do so in the spring of 2023. Okay, great. So the question then becomes, can we target students who are not transfer ready before they begin at UCF? The answer is yes, and we can do it in 3 ways. So in this case, looking at a cohort of over 1,600 students who either began at UCF from Valencia this fall or they're expected to do so in the spring, we were able to group students based on their readiness of transfer success. So you'll see that we have the 1, 2, 3. We have students not ready for any program, red flag, red flag. Then we have students not ready for their selected program because they've already made a selection. And then we have students who are partially ready based on their course history and in alignment to those choices. So the smallest group that we want to talk about is probably the most important. We found 47 students that have 0 course alignment with their applied program. This is extremely important because if we don't provide intervention now, there's a chance that these students are going to struggle once they begin classes. Some of them already have begun classes. We need to intervene and get these students back on track. And that takes the work of a lot of different individuals, but we have the way to pinpoint who those students are and at least get that work started. We also found that 78% students were either not ready or partially ready for their program. So they're a little bit further along, but they still have some work to do to ensure the best success for them, which means that unfortunately only 18% of this cohort of over 1,600 students are about to enter or already have entered fully ready for success within their program of choice. Now we're going to take a look at students who are fully ready to have transfer success and graduate from UCF, but they have yet to apply for the transfer. Okay, so our next question is, can CFEED identify fully transfer-ready students who have yet to apply for the transfer? Why, yes, we can. And we have classified these students into 3 groups. We have students who are nearing graduation, which means that they have 30 or more credit hours, students approaching graduation with 45 or more credits, or students likely to graduate with 60 or more credits. This is a cohort that contains almost 10,000 students in this student progression cohort from Valencia. And we have found that thousands of students in this cohort are already ready for at least one specific program at UCF. So at CFEED, what we've been working on is developing a way to target and produce lists of students who are ready for plans for specific UCF colleges and programs of study. And there might be some work to do, and Dalila will show you some specific examples of how we might find students that have made a choice, but their alignment with the classes they've been taking and been successful in is not fully aligned. So for each student, really, the next step is to tailor a conversation and go through the different options with them of how they can ensure their success pathway and graduate ready to rock and roll. So we're just going to transition here to show some of our infrastructure and how we can pinpoint these things in real time.
Thank you, Ashton, and thank you all for joining us today. Okay, so just leave it like that. Just leave it like that. Okay, thank you. And I'm just gonna put it a little bit bigger. Okay. So, if you recall last time, we showed you this. It was sometimes October of last year. We got to see a few of these same demos, right? We're not going to go into details of all of these, but we did want to highlight a couple things from the main dashboard, right? So not only we see that there is the increase in shock events was historically going up, but we also can see it going more from 2021 to 2022. We have additional updated historical information. To go into the details, we will elaborate by going to the next page. From here, if we focus on the completers, right? Our 2-year completers suffering shock events at less than 1 out of 5. Our 2 years completers, and we're talking about UCF, Valencia UCF. Our 2 years completers are suffering 1 in 5, right? That's your ideal candidate, right? Only 1 in 5 of them are experiencing a shock event. Whereas the most negative events, we're seeing shock events of at least 2 and 3. That is a significant number, right? When we look at it with enough historical data. Now, with the additional increases, we're going to start to see this change over time as well. It's not just going to happen, stop this year or next year. It is going to be continuing to change over time. Let's get to basically get the new part, which is what we're going to be talking about more about this year. Maybe more. So the last time we presented this to you, we talked about how to be able to support action. CFEED is not just about research, it's about action right away. We do not want you just to give numbers, but we want also to be part of the action right away. So we talked about how to be able to support action after transfer, predicting it before transfer. Most of the feedback we got was how do we segment students who haven't started the transfer, so that way we can better prepare for our targeting students and prepare for the process, right? The segmentation we're going to be pulling forward focuses on 2 big groups. If you look at the 9,000, about 9,932, those are the students that did not do the transfer to UCF yet. The second part, the 1832, these are the students from Valencia that already applied already started their applications at UCF. And we were talking about the current term as of now. So those who started the transfer and those who did not start the transfer. So we know where these students are, we know where they're coming from, we know their status. We organize these students to basically segments. The first one would be the ones that are likely to graduate. If you look at this one, those are the likely to graduate, those are approaching and nearing graduation. We know in this term, in this semester, those who are approaching have about 15 credit left as of now. Those who are in the near group have 30 credit left to complete their graduation. By doing that segmentation, we can prioritize who we can connect with. By doing also this segmentation, we can also see who is ready and who is not. So if you recall from last year, we defined readiness, which is one of the measurements we use in our CFEED model. Using our machine learning, the latest technology in Microsoft, we defined our readiness as having all the relevant courses for a given plan. Going back to our last presentation, we shared all relevant courses based on our model. We are using that as basically our readiness measurement. And you can clearly see that we have students who are ready from here, partially ready, and the ones that are not ready. In our visuals as well, we can see all the demographics of those students. And we can also see where are they on their segmentations and how many of them are ready or not. there is one point to highlight that basically stand out from this current term, is that there are over 1,000 students who are ready for more than one plan at UCF, and we can see it here. Over 1,000 students that have more than one plan that they could choose from. And another point I can mention is that on the left side of the dashboard, we can also see those students who did the intent to basically interest for the Direct Connect, and those who did not show the intent for Direct Connect. So just like in our slides from a few minutes ago, we are going first to focus on those students who have started their process, basically their transfer application to UCF. And we from going back to one of the previous slides, we can see that there are 47, we mentioned there are 47 students that are likely to graduate and who are not ready, right? So going back to likely and not ready. And this is gonna give us the list of all the students that basically ready and not ready, and they're likely to graduate. So let's look at one of them, and we can demonstrate how we can help those and support those students. Let's see if I can get the first one. 25. Right, so so this student has a really good cumulative GPA, 3.39. The first term GPA is about 4.0, right? Has been on a Direct Connect, Direct Pathway, and not really repeating all the courses. This student has applied for pre-finance. If you look at the choice of program, the student has applied for pre-finance, right? We can begin to look at the courses taken to see if what they applied for align with their choice of plan, right? So in this transcript, we can see that this is more about baking, right? It's more about not really aligns with the student's choice of plan. This is somebody whose interests really align with the culinary program. This student is probably not ready to go into one of the higher majors. This is a great opportunity, right, to touch base with these students, and this is why we want to approach the student and have a conversation to kind of align them with what they need. So let's look at also another one, just to demonstrate more. And let's click 5137. Similar situation, right? Exactly with the previous one. This student is likely to graduate. Not ready to transfer. Why? Well, let's see. Almost 3.5 cumulative GPA, 4.0 first term GPA. Additionally, this student isn't repeating any courses. Is on Direct Pathway, single attempt pathway, right? When we look at what they applied for, or is it he or she? He applied for mechanical engineering. the classes that this student took had nothing to do with the plan they choose, right? Most of it is leadership, information technology, business classes. So maybe this is a good student that doesn't really perfectly align with their choice of program. This is a great student, right? But maybe he needs to take some prerequisites courses, starting with to get to the level he wants. Or maybe we can work through a realignment of the appropriate plan to enter the program. This is not about stopping students from transferring, and we want to make sure to emphasize that. This is not about stopping students from transferring. This is about aligning them with the core interests of their ability to be successful. So now let's look at another example where basically we can emphasize one more point. Look at one of the students who, let me see. Okay. 80 to 75. Sorry, 1 second. And this one is one with basically likely to graduate, transfer ready, and not within the recommended list of the courses that he chose to have. And then we're gonna pick one of them. Let's see if. So the count of those students basically who are transfer ready, likely to graduate, and choosing programs that are not aligning with their courses or relevant courses, right? We have about 623 from the list, and we'll start with this one. So this student has started the transfer. The plan that they applied for is anthropology, right? And cumulative GPA of 3.69, very good students. First term GPA is 4. We can see that he's or she's really a good student, having also a direct pathway, single attempt, right? Going back to what she chose as her major, we can see that this conflicts with what the actual grade or the courses are. They do have other degrees planned that they're more appropriately aligned with. CFE model had created a great model for every student, basically to recommend a major based on their courses that they've already took or their interest. So going back to this one, we can see that these students could use, for example, enter the one of those programs which are 100% relevant to their courses, not just the anthropology. So maybe we can approach these students and give them a better option than what they chose, so to be more successful, right?
Dalila, we are at the Oscars, and we're at the part where the music has started at the end of the speech. So before I know everyone's thinking about their lunch choice, so we'll finish up. But I want to ask everyone to briefly engage and get re-energized before we eat. I want you guys to think back. We're all educated individuals in this room. Think back to when you were in college, and think about if you ever had a time in your college career where you either had no idea what you were going to study, or you already were in a major and for whatever reason it just wasn't working out for you. Maybe you just didn't like it, or a passion drew you somewhere else. Raise your hand if that was you at some point in your life. Look at that. It was me. for sure. I went into my undergrad wanting to be like the sports guy on Sports Center. I ended up being an elementary school principal. So like I definitely made a change in major. I definitely made another change, obviously, but like this is what we are capable of at CFED is we can pinpoint these students who have all various levels of GPA. We can pinpoint ethnicity to start closing some of those gaps, and we can wrap our arms around them and have conversations to see, you know, where do you want to go? Or if you don't know, here's some ideas. Like this student maybe has no idea that they could be a rock star in criminal justice or sports and exercise. Like I would have loved for someone to give me that information. I had no idea what I was doing. I just was like, I love kids, I'll be a teacher, it worked out. But we have like this amazing opportunity to really do some important work, and CFED has the ability to get super specific for each student and provide that to our partners.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a really quick question. I work privately, so a lot of the people I work with are people who feel like this system is failing them, and so they come to me and I work with other organizations usually to help people in that situation. But one of the things that I always find extremely common with the people that come to me is that they are taking ridiculous amounts of classes that do not need to be taken. And how is it that you can't just put in a system block people that do not have the requirements or that aren't able to have something established from able to keep taking these classes that make no sense for them? It doesn't make any sense why this is even something that you have to report, because it shouldn't be happening. This should not be able to happen to the extent at the student's level. They have a 3.69 GPA, or the other student did, and had all of these problems. It seems like there were so many obstacles put in somebody's way when they don't need to have them. So my question is, yes, I see this, but why can't you just automatically block people that are not able to make these decisions without having advice before they go on and take semesters worth of classes, and no one is telling them, hey, this is not something that you should be doing? Why is that happening?
I like you. That's a really important point, but I think that's why we're deep into this work, and we're having meetings, especially Diana, with a lot of leaders at Valencia and UCF to ensure that those things don't continue to happen, that we're not wasting anyone's time. You know, we're not here to crush dreams either, so, you know, who knows, maybe the baker that had all those culinary classes, maybe they want to study creative finance to open their own restaurant someday. We don't know, but we're going to start wrapping our arms around these students, figuring out what's going on with them, and help them make the next steps that make the most sense for them.
Thank you, Ashton, and thank you for your question. Very important. That's why we are here. That's why we are teaming with our leaders to kind of wrap up. So 3 more minutes. I know we are out of time.
Yeah.
Just 1 more minute. 1 more minute.
We have to turn off the mic.
Yes.
Negotiating.
Yes. 1 more minute. I want to show the ability of CFED. We are not here just to show the numbers. It's about making the list. So if we, going back to this, there is an export option here that we, CFED, have done, where we can basically generate the list of all the students that are not ready or going to a different major that is not within the recommended list. Doing so, we can basically generate few lists. What is that list? Sorry. Yes. So by having this kind of list immediately for anyone trying to support our students, we can basically get all the information. If we want to look at their how many students are coming to this semester with all the not ready for their major courses, majors, we can specify who are those students by gender, by ethnicity, by major. We can specify every filter that we use on that dashboard, group them into whatever list we want, by GPA, low GPA, higher GPA. This would make the list. This list is basically all what we need, and it's available, from our standpoint, for anybody who from Valencia or UCF to basically get that list, start immediate action, and work with those students so we can make our students successful right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I get to be that guy, right? All right, so we're moving 12 to 12:30 for lunch, so that gives 40 minutes for the presentations. They're on the 3rd floor. There's an elevator back behind Cafe. There's what? There's one of the sessions isn't here. Yeah, if you're already here, then good for you. Then back behind Cafe Bustelo, there's an elevator. Otherwise, there's stairs 2 up. You've been sitting for a while, so maybe getting your legs stretched and getting up the stairs is probably the best and quickest route. Lunch is also in a different room, so consult your agenda. 12:30 for lunch. We will get started with the student panel right away once we hit the ground at 12:30.